Thank you all so much for coming to our first ever, hopefully it's our first annual, Forum on Economic Development here at the County of San Diego, where we're focused on advancing prosperity. My name is Caroline Smith, and I am the director of the county's Office of Economic Development and Government Affairs. And many of you all I met about 2 years ago this time when I frantically reached out to you and said, so our op plan's been released. We're going to have an economic development department, and I don't know what I'm doing, so please help. And so really this was our Board of Supervisors' vision that, we had not been involved at the county in the economic development space for more than 2 decades. And when our board changed over in 2021, thanks to term limits, we had a whole new group of supervisors with different backgrounds and different experiences and different priorities in the community. And they came together and said, the county really should do more in the economic development space. Some of them had come from city councils, cities that were heavily involved in economic development and really saw an opportunity for the county to do a better job, quite frankly, than we had been doing in supporting the work that you all had been advancing for decades. So, and also to do a CEDS, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, since that had been the #1 gap that was identified. So when we moved this forward about 2 years ago, we wanted to really enter the space thoughtfully because we hadn't been involved and we didn't want to step in and say, great, we'll take all this on and then not do it well. We wanted to honor the work that you all had been doing, but really listen into where you needed us to be and what you needed us to do to help support the work that you're doing. Understanding the direction from our board was very specifically to look at economic development through an equity lens, to incorporate arts and culture, and to really, really look at how we help reach those communities who hadn't been reached by us in the past. So that was really where our journey started with the Office of Economic Development and Government Affairs. And then we were fortunate enough, with many of your help, who helped us write job descriptions and recruitments and things like that, to build up a team of really amazing professionals that helped us start this journey. And thank you all for staying with us. Thank you all for staying engaged. Thank you for your advice. And then when we came to you and said, all right, we're going to do a forum, what do you want to hear? Overwhelmingly, we heard we work a lot with the city, with the smaller cities in the region. What is it that the county does? Where can we go to you for services? And so we're here today to kind of pull back the veil. So I am really excited to welcome you all today. I will say you get not even the B team, but the C team. Our chairwoman, Nora Vargas, was invited to attend today, but unfortunately she's having a medical issue with her throat. I want to thank Griselda for coming today from her team and representing, but also just want to acknowledge that she is here in spirit and provided us a lot of direction and leadership when it came to shaping what this was going to look like for you today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Deputy Director, Steve Lockett. Many of you have worked with him. We stole him from the East Coast and all of his expertise in workforce boards and economic development to kind of walk you through the journey that we've been on after we jumped off the jumping off point 2 years ago, and really what we're looking to do now and into the future. So Steve.
I've got control. Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming today. Really appreciate it. Today's event is a number of things. One, a culmination of the last year and a half of work done by our office, reaching out to many of you, many of our other partners, and getting a sense of where the county can really play a role in economic development and what the county really sees as economic prosperity. So what I'm going to do today is kind of go over our journey, go over what we mean by economic prosperity, some of the projects that we're working on, some of the places that we're looking to go over the next year. Also, I did want to mention that this is Economic Development Week as recognized by the International Economic Development Council. So it's one of the reasons we're having that event this week. And we're every day we're posting on LinkedIn and other sources various things about what we are doing in our office for Economic Development Week. So with that, I'm going to jump into it. Let's see. There we go. Today I'm going to be going through a number of things. What is economic prosperity and how the county views that? Just a very brief overview of the San Diego region. Many of you know this information, so I'm not going to dwell on it too much. Where can the county play a role? As Caroline said, you all are doing amazing work out in the community, but where can we, as the county, leverage that work and where can we move things forward? I'm going to do a little dive into our office. Again, current efforts that we're working on and looking ahead. So what is economic prosperity? Well, first, let's start with what is economic development. Traditionally, economic development is seen taught in many ways to be very business-friendly first, making sure the businesses have the resources they need, the workforce they need, the efforts, any kind of thing they need to grow, expand, and stay in communities. And all of that is fantastic. I've been working on that for 20 years, and I want to keep working on that for another 20 years. But we really view economic prosperity as an expansion of that, where we're looking at not just making sure that the businesses have what they need to survive and thrive, but what our residents in the county of San Diego have to thrive and be here. What they need to not only have the jobs, but make sure that they start building generational wealth here in the county and that they can stay here. So what we do is we really look at how do we make sure that there are resources available for people to get education, to get services needed to get in the workforce, and that we make sure that we are helping everyone here in the county. Drivers of economic prosperity include, of course, a diverse and entrenched economic sectors, a diverse workforce, and this doesn't just mean demographics, but also those of varying education levels and skills that can meet all of those various sectors that we have here in San Diego. That there's public and private investment both in the business community, but also in our infrastructure, in our society. And these last two, flexibility and adaptability and coordination and long-term vision, these are things I think that the county can really bring to economic prosperity in the region. I always believe that to really be accomplished in economic development, you have to be flexible in your ideas and the way you do things, and you have to be adaptable to conditions, whether it's something as tragic as COVID-19 or something like a highway shutting down for a day. How do we make sure that we're adaptable, we're responsive, but also flexible? Because the last thing that as the economy moves and grows, if you're inflexible, things are going to go bad. Obstacles to economic prosperity, many of you may know these well. We hear about them on the news quite often, the cost of living, which of course is very high here in our region. Pre-existing barriers, whether they be something that's affecting disadvantaged communities, that's ingrained in our systems that we need to change, they're there. Lack of communication and cooperation. This happens a lot. As I mentioned, I've been in this field for 20 years. The thing that always stops any kind of innovation or anything moving forward are groups not working together, being in silos, doing their own thing, and not wanting to cooperate. That will stifle any innovation and any economic prosperity. And the line I hate most in the world, we've always done it this way. I never like to hear that. And I feel like whenever I come up against it, it's because I'm bringing forth something that sounds a little better and a little bit different. And there's a lot of entrenchment, and it's good to look beyond that. Many of you will already know this, of course. We are the second largest county in California. Coming from the East Coast, this is a much bigger county than I had imagined. I am used to running through like 4 counties in an hour. And it takes, I don't even get through a third of this county in an hour. We have the 5th largest county population in the U.S., the largest U.S.-Mexico metro region of any place in the country, the most number of tribal reservations in the country. That's 18 total. 17 of those are federally recognized, but 18 total. In terms of area, larger than Delaware and Rhode Island combined. We have quite a diverse population, which is fantastic, and a diverse economy, which I'll get into in a second. And we're really well positioned, amazingly positioned, binationally and also internationally with the connections across the Pacific Rim. One of the most amazing things about our county's economy is how diverse it is. There's so many regions, so many states or municipalities that have one driver of economic development, whether it's manufacturing or retail or hospitality. But here, between the military, between the tourism, between our manufacturing, our life science, everything, we have a really, really diverse economic base. What this allows us to do is be more stable in times of upheaval. So when there are difficulties in the economy that affects everyone, our fluctuations tend to be a little more mellow. We don't get as low as some other areas, and maybe we don't get as high, but it allows us to be a lot more stable. These numbers are, I think, a little out of date, but 1.5 million regional jobs, nearly $300 billion in gross regional product. You can see it all up there. Our median income, which I think is fascinating, is $20,000 more than the U.S. average. With recent home price changes, that's probably a little different now. As you can see on the screen, we have a variety of industries that I've mentioned, and I think that we're poised to grow even more. I think with the way we're looking in terms of energy, in terms of climate change, we're going to see even growing number of industries that mirror these, but also really expand our workforce. Wonderful to see our strong academic and research universities. We have 4 amazing higher level education, not to mention, of course, our community colleges and our high schools. Thriving investment and innovation ecosystem. Of course, I mentioned binational region. And all our awesome economic development organizations, the regional EDC, our north, east, south region. So many municipalities have their own EDCs. So it kind of comes down to, well, this is a great place. This is a great economy. There are already existing EDOs out there. Where can the county play a role? And so, as Caroline alluded to, this was a question that has been asked, and we've been working on the last couple of years. Excuse me. As you all know, I've been here just over a year and a half, and I've been going around asking this question, talking to a lot of you, being like, well, with all the great work you all are doing, with all the partners in the region, where can the county play a role? And really, it's about this promoting economic prosperity. And the breadth and depth of the people and resources that this county has with our 20,000 staff, all of our departments, allows us as a county, as an entity, to do a lot more than a lot of other county operations that I've worked with in the past and that are out there. What we can do in terms of not only our office, but the other departments across the county, is we can really go for and really promote this vision of economic prosperity that I mentioned earlier. We can leverage our resources. We can leverage our personnel. We can act as that convener because we're the county. It's easy, as we can see here. It's good to say you're the county to bring people here, bring people together. We can lead, but we can also just be a partner. We don't always have to lead. One of the things I mentioned when I would go around and meet with folks is be like, yes, I'm with the county, but I don't want to step on any toes. I don't want to get in the way. You all are doing great work. Where can we be a partner? Or, when necessary, where can we step up and lead efforts? And if nothing else, where can we be a champion? Where can we see all the great work that you all are doing and put it out there saying, yes, this is awesome. Let's get it out there in the airwaves. Let's do it the way we can promote it, whether that's formally or informally. We want to do that. One of the great ways that this was pitched to me when I was going around was this office and our role in the county is to be that air traffic controller, to see where everyone is going, where the regional universities are focused on their research, where the small business center is working on some of their programs, where some of the municipalities are focused on their economic development efforts, and where can we see where there's alignment? Where can we see where 2 or more organizations who may not talk to each other much, where can we get them to work together? Where can we see how it all fits together? So when EDGA, Economic Development and Government Affairs, was founded in July of 2022, we're just about 2 years old, our office was built to do just this, to be that voice of the county's economic development efforts and to provide connectivity both into and out of the county. Our office is divided into 3 units. My office is the Economic Development and Prosperity team. We also have a Government Affairs team, which deals with the legislative priorities of the Board of Supervisors here in the county. And we have a grants team that administers the various district office grants, which some of you may know about, the Neighborhood Revitalization Grant and the Community Enhancement Grant. Our Economic Development and Prosperity team, we are a mighty team of 4. And I will introduce them all to you shortly. But what we do, as I mentioned, we take economic development in a broad scope. So what we have is we focus on traditional economic development, but we also have a creative economy group. We have a unit working on land and community development and external grants. So our economic development purview is to do the traditional business retention and expansion efforts. We work a lot with the state GoBiz office. They bring opportunities to us for businesses that are looking to relocate to San Diego County. A lot of times they may not work in county unincorporated land, but we share that information with our municipal partners and we try to see if there's a good fit for those businesses. We implement the county's comprehensive economic development strategy, which I'll get into in a minute. As I mentioned, we try to work to see where we can be a regional convener, leader, and trusted resource for all of you. And we coordinate efforts. We try to look at countywide efforts where we can play that role as convener. So our comprehensive economic development strategy. So Caroline mentioned this earlier, but what this is, or CEDS for short, is the Federal Economic Development Administration requires a community or region to have a comprehensive economic development strategy in order to be able to access EDA funds, grant funding. So this 5-year strategic plan really lays out the economic development vision for a community. This can be for a city, it can be for multiple cities, it can be for a county, it can be for multiple counties, whatever the geographic rationale is. So our CEDS, which was passed in 2022, in September 2022, is the first time that the county has had a countywide CEDS in 20 years. There had been prior CEDS that covered parts of the county, but not all of it. So our CEDS has 9 strategic initiatives. I won't read them all. I'm happy to share the website if anyone wants to read through this. I'm not lying, it really is a cool document. But as you can see on the screen, what we're looking at here is much of what we described when we describe economic prosperity. It's about uplifting the quality of life of all San Diegans. It's making sure that we have the innovative ecosystem that really supports our economy. And where can the county play that role? But it's not only us. In the CEDS, we reference other partners. Much of the information we received to build this CEDS came from many of you, from many of our partners. And we can't do this alone. We can't hit the outcomes needed by ourselves. This is a group effort all the way. So this CEDS document really guides what we do in terms of the broad economic development. A lot of the programs that we look at doing, we make sure that it fits under some of the metrics that's in the CEDS. Every year we're given the opportunity through EDA to update it. So if there are certain programs and projects that we didn't know about before, we can update it, on an annual basis, or we can take some things out if necessary. In the first year, we haven't really changed anything because we still were getting everything up and running, but we're looking at maybe adding a few things for this next year. One thing I'm really proud of that we accomplished this year is this EDA qualification map, which is a GIS map available online on the county's website. As I mentioned, the CEDS allows communities to access EDA funding. Well, one of the other requirements of EDA funding is that you be in a qualified area. And there are 2 types of qualifications. Either your community has a per capita income level that is 80% of the national average, or you have an unemployment rate that is at least 1 percentage point higher than the national average. So not every place in San Diego County is going to qualify for this. However, what we did was we took all the census tracts in the county, went through, and we built this GIS map to show which communities based on census tract would apply or would be applicable for either one of those qualifications. And what we found is that there are a lot more areas across the county that fit this requirement than initially thought. Some of the actual contacts in EDA, when I reached out to them, when first told me, honestly, they said, we don't see the need to fund anything above the 8. And I thought that sounded absolutely ridiculous. And I was sure that there were communities that would fit the requirements, for EDA, and we were right. So this map is available online. It's brand new, so we actually haven't linked it to our website yet, but we will do that soon. One of the really, really cool things that we do in this county, which a lot of places don't, but it's growing, is identifying the creative economy as a driver of economic ability in our community. And this isn't just artists. This is everyone who deals with any kind of creative arts. It could be sculptors, it could be craftspeople, it could be people who do jewelry, who do filmmaking, everything. It's something that's really growing across the country, especially as we're noticing, probably coming out of COVID, all the amazing ways that people express themselves. And we have found that the creative economy is a huge component, not only here in, in the county, but across the state of California. State of California has been recognizing this as a major driver, and there are a couple other states, such as Washington and a few out east, that were seeing this as a driver and paying much more attention to it. one of the things that I try to mention to folks as a reminder is, you don't often think of this, but artists are entrepreneurs. They're sole proprietors. They're out there. They want to get paid. They're doing their work. I mean, they're doing it because they love it, but they're looking for funds. They are entrepreneurs. They're out there. They're doing their business, and we should support that. Our Creative Economy unit oversees the reconstituted Arts and Culture Commission. It just celebrated its first year back in the county, and this Arts and Culture Commission does a number of things to promote arts in unincorporated County of San Diego, but also works with the City of San Diego's Arts and Culture Group and other municipalities. And the other exciting thing that we do under our Creative Economy approach is we're working with the other municipalities across the county to re-emphasize the County of San Diego and all the municipalities they're in as a destination for filmmaking. What we've been able to do is, LA is of course the epicenter for filmmaking, but what we've been able to do over the last year through various little means and convincing some folks to come down and do a few commercials is kind of pitch the idea that San Diego County has everything that LA County has, mostly, in terms of filming. You have beaches, we have cities, we have desert, but we're also a lot cheaper and we're easier to reach. You can actually call us and get us on the phone. We don't have a lot of paperwork, so please come down here and film. And I can say, the one I can talk about, there are a couple that are in the works. We have certainly gotten a number of commercials. San Diego's certainly along the harbor front has got a lot of commercials lately. But there is the TV show, the new TV show, NCIS, what's Hawaii, NCI, a new NCIS, a new spinoff will be filming in this county. And so we're excited about that. And there are a couple other ones that are potential, which I would love to mention, but we can't. But just know that this effort, a year ago when we really started to kick this off with the city and we brought in the port and we brought in some other partners, it kind of looked like a long shot. But really just honestly within the last 12 months, we have seen a huge increase in interest. Film producers look at us and they do see that we're easy to work with, that we're just down the road, relatively speaking, from LA, and we are getting a lot more traction on this. So I'm very excited about how this moves forward. As I mentioned, the creative economy in the San Diego region is really big with two recent studies. There was one done by the city, but it was kind of a regional study, showed $10.8 billion impact in the region. And, whoops, misspelled that, 37% of, 3%, sorry, error on there. 170,000 jobs across 71 different creative industries. And as I mentioned, with these being sole proprietors and entrepreneurs, 80% of them are small businesses. So for those of us who really know that small business is the driver of an economy, this is something we really need to pay attention to. The recent Arts and Economic Prosperity 6 report, this is, as you can see by the number, this is the sixth one, it focuses on nonprofits and the impact of nonprofits in the creative economy. And of those who responded, 226, $1.4 billion impact in the region. I mean, this is really a huge underappreciated impact in our region. Our Land and Community Development Group does the traditional business retention, expansion, and attraction activities, as I mentioned earlier with GoBiz. We work with many departments across the county, especially LUGE, PDS, Long Range Planning, about how to best utilize county land. Oftentimes we're asked to lend an opinion about projects that are being worked on in terms of an economic or business perspective. Our team is working very closely with others across the county on the DFA, or Development Feasibility Analysis, which is helping to address our housing crisis in the region. And one of the other things that we're looking at doing a lot more of over the next year and more is working with some of our unincorporated communities to develop economic or business strategies for their downtowns or their communities. Some of them have community plans, but some of these are a little old. We are working with Long Range Planning on trying to identify a couple communities where we can do this. One of the other really exciting things that is new to the county and new to many counties is a person whose dedicated focus is on identifying all the external federal and state grants that come into the county across the departments. So for the first time in for the first time ever, last fiscal year, we were able to do a very big report showing all the different federal grants, all the different state grants that have come into the county across the enterprise. And Tammy Foy over here is smiling because she's the one who started it. But it's what it shows is the vast impact and the amount of work being done here across the county, all the work coming in, but also what it allows us to do over time is identify where we have our strengths in terms of grants applications, going for grants, where we may have missed opportunities, where we may have places where we could looking for additional grant funding, or maybe where we could be a little better. So it's a work in process. It's a time over time data management. But what we're doing with our external grants focus is not only identifying those grants coming into the county, but identifying grant opportunities that our different departments can go for. But also, if we see something that we think one of you would benefit from, we want to get that out, and we want to be there to share that information and in a nice digestible format. So what we do is we have a person dedicated to reviewing grants, and they look at a variety of different areas and topics. And so that's one of the things we want to learn when we get out and meet with partners is what are your priorities? When you're looking for grants, what are you looking for? And then we can help you look for those. As I mentioned, engaging is so important. One of the things I tell my team is that half of our job is being present and being there, listening, learning, and being around in the community and knowing what's going on. When I first got here, I spent the first 6 months just kind of reaching out to folks. I think I met with over 50 different external partners in those first couple months, just learning what was going on, learning about the ecosystem, learning what was going on, and where we can, again, as I mentioned earlier, where we can leverage, where we can convene, where we can lead, and where we can champion. It's really important. One of the things that's coming up that I've been working on, and many of you may know about, is the California Jobs First initiative. This is a statewide initiative to promote high road job creation, particularly coming out of COVID. And our county and Imperial County are together with the Southern Border Coalition. There are 13 groups, 13 regional groups around the state. And I am the co-lead for the government sector. So what we're in the process of now is finalizing our regional plan. And that hopefully by August, we can get to the point where we can start looking at projects that will benefit some of our underserved communities and start creating those high road jobs. I mentioned this earlier briefly, but I kind of want to expound on it. When I say we're a conduit in and out of the county, I think our Office of EDGA is well positioned to bring in information to the county and disseminate it to our various departments from what we hear from our economic development partners, but also be that conduit to send information out. One of the reasons that we're here today, and you'll hear from our panel this afternoon, is one of the things I've heard is that a lot of times folks look at the county and say it's massive, we don't know what goes on there, we don't know how to get in, we don't know how to reach these departments. And we in EDGA have been willing to serve as that conduit, trying to share that information. But what we're going to do today is really hear from some of our leaders who can expound on that even more. I'm not even going to dwell on this slide. We work with so many external partners. We want to learn. One of the things we do in EDGA is we have for those of you who may know, the strengths book, where you kind of do a little test and you figure out what your strengths are. Surprisingly, our entire team, we're like all learners and achievers, and so we want to get out there and we want to meet and we want to learn. We want to know what everyone's doing. So we are open and willing we want to know what everyone's working on. I'm going to briefly kind of recap some of the things we've worked on in our first year. As I said, we've done a lot of outreach. We've spent the last year setting up our office, filling out our team, which has been fantastic. We did coordinate 2 efforts to go for large EDA grants. EDA had 2 probably once in a generation grant opportunities. One was around tech hubs, one was around called Recompete, which is around uplifting underserved communities. And our office was the convener for both of these efforts for San Diego County. We had approximately 20 partners per effort. Unfortunately, they were not successful. A lot of times EDA will look at us as San Diego and think that we have all the money and resources and everything we need and we don't need additional help, which I have concerns about that. But the fact that we were able to do that and convene that and bring everyone together is something that hadn't been done in the region for a while. This is something I've heard consistently, that we were able to bring together folks that hadn't worked together on projects like this for a while. So we look to be willing to do this in the future should other opportunities come up. As I mentioned, we restarted the Arts and Culture Commission and our film initiative. We completed the first external grants evaluation. We did the EDA qualification map. We worked with a variety of partners on smaller projects that we don't need to get into here. And that's just in our first year and a half. Looking ahead, we have a number of ideas for this year. Looking at 2024, the rest of 2024, we have a number of opportunities that have come open to us. In small business, I think the county can really play a role in being a driver and convener of small business activities. Of course, we have the SBA and SBDC here in the county, and they're tremendous. But there are ways that I think that we, as a county, can kind of play a role in leading some programs. So I'm going to quickly discuss 4 that we're kind of looking at. The first is a cooperation between our office and the Office of Labor Standards and Enforcement here in the county. We are looking to identify a small cohort, I have a hard time saying that word, between 5 and 10 small restaurants in the South Bay area who may be, because through no fault of their own, may be having some issues in meeting the labor standards that we have in the county. What we're going to do with this cohort is give them a free evaluation of their legal status, their HR status, and their bookkeeping status, and then fund for them for at least a year a bookkeeper to help them keep their books and to keep it moving forward, so that hopefully at the end of the year, they are above board with all labor standards, they're making more money, and they're keeping their books really well. What we're doing is we're working with the SBA, we're working with with the Chula Vista Chamber and the South County EDC on this project, and we're hoping to roll that out sometime this year. Another one, which I'm going to touch on briefly, and then Director Andrew Strong will probably mention on the panel, is we're working with the Office of Equity and Racial Justice and the Department of Purchasing and Contracting, keeping all these acronyms together, on how we can help small minority BIPOC businesses do contracting with the county. What we can do to help kind of break down some of those barriers, whether they're internal, whether they're external, and how do we work with our external partners to do that? How do we look internally to see what we need to do internally as a county to help these businesses? The third one is something that I worked on a little bit when I was on the East Coast, is succession planning and employee ownership. A lot of small businesses, as we know, are owned by sometimes mom and pop or equivalent, and as they get older, they want to retire. But maybe sometimes they don't have a family member or somebody who's willing to take over that business. So in some ways, they're almost not trapped in that business, but they're finding ways to make it work. Well, through a couple of various programs, both in North Carolina and the state of Colorado, there are concentrated efforts and programs in place that will provide first we'll provide financial analysis of the business to give the owner an idea of what their business is worth, training to potential entrepreneurs to take over this business, and then connect them together. Or, should the business be large enough, work with the employees so they can become employee owners of that business and take it over. So this allows for the business owners to retire, pass that business on, and keep it in the community. My team and I were having lunch earlier today. One of the things we were talking about were all the great restaurants in San Diego. And a couple of them that were mentioned were ones that had been in the neighborhood for a long time. So what happens when a small business like that, or a small other type of business that goes, you don't want that going out of business. It's an institution in the community. And so this kind of training and program can help keep that business alive and in place. And then finally, the fourth one that we're kind of looking at is, again, a group I've worked with out east. What they're called Partners in Equity. And this group, what they do is they work with BIPOC business owners to purchase the property and real estate on which their business is located, to help them make sure that they keep that wealth in that community and hopefully create more generational wealth. I'm looking to get them out here to meet with some folks who may be interested in partnering with this, being co-investors in setting up a program. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. As I mentioned, we're looking to work with unincorporated communities on developing strategic plans for these communities. Again, mentioned California Jobs First. I really think our office, our EDGA can do more in terms of binational and international engagement on an economic level. We're exploring that to see what we can do, work with the World Trade Center at the EDC. Also, for those of you who don't know, we have a binational officer in the county who is relatively new, and so we're going to work with her. And of course, film expansion, other things. And if you all are interested, if we see, I may turn this event, Advancing Prosperity, into a quarterly webinar where we take a certain topic area and we have maybe somebody from inside the county and outside the county do an hour program about certain topics. So that's one of the things we're looking to keep this brand going. So before we jump any further, I do want to introduce my team. We have Zhang Myers, who is our Creative Economy Manager. Matt Osland is our Land and Community Development Manager. And Stephen Felica is our External Grants Manager. So this is our team of economic development and prosperity. Can't thank them enough for all the work that they've done today and for everything and all they've done. But it's not just us. It's not just us doing this. As I mentioned, this county of 20,000 people, all these different departments, they do so many things, so many amazing things that advance prosperity across the county in non-traditional ways that people may not realize. It's not just necessarily economic, not just necessarily putting money in people's pockets, but it's programs that allow people to reach their abilities. And that's one of the things that I find so wonderful about working here, is all the great folks, all the great programs, all the great departments, and how we're all working together to make sure that we really work to uplift all San Diegans and promote prosperity. So with that, we're going to hear from some of those leaders now, and I'm going to transition us back to Caroline, who will introduce our panel.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate that. And I am introducing our moderator today. So we are honored to have Mark Cafferty here serving as our moderator for our County Leaders Panel. And Mark is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the San Diego Regional Economic Development Corporation. And in that role, he sits at the center of a unique collaboration of business, trade, community, and education leaders who have redefined the region's economic development strategy and cementing the region as a key stakeholder in the global economy. He has spent more than 25 years designing systems to support career advancement and economic opportunity for American workers. He's served in numerous public sector leadership positions and has been sought as a consultant on workforce development efforts throughout the country. He's co-chaired, we were talking about this earlier, co-chaired a number of task forces, but some of them included the former mayor's Workforce and Economic Advisory Committee, and he was also appointed to serve on the International Trade and Investment Advisory Council by Governor Jerry Brown. He frequently engages with local and national media on topics that are important to San Diego's economy. And just on a personal note, Mark has been a wonderful advisor, thought partner, mentor to the county in general and to me personally. And so we just thank you so much for being here today to do all of this. So Mark, I'll turn it to you.
In this room, every word of the bio better be true because I've worked with a lot of you for a long time. So thank you. I'm going to moderate from here if it's okay. I know we have 5 seats up here, but it looks like we have 2 mics. And for the 4 panelists, I think if you can just share 2. So if that's okay, I'll just do it from here. So could I call our 4 panelists up? I'll do quick intros as I put my glasses on because I can't read anything without them these days. So first is Sarah Agassi, interim CAO for the County of San Diego. Andrew Strong, Director, Office of Equity and Racial Justice. Davia Lynch, Director, Land Use and Environmental Group for Planning and Development Services. And Jennifer Bransford-Coons, Director, HSEC, Office of Equitable Communities. And so quick round of applause for our panel here. This is a fun group for me to get to talk to because there are so many elements of what Steve just talked about that are represented beautifully in the audience. And I just want to, first of all, a team of 4, that's much bigger than we've had in a long time in the county of San Diego. So I think we all welcome that. I think for those of us who've done different elements of this work for a long time as well, I cannot overemphasize how important the county is to this work. I think how important the county as an entity, we are a regional EDC, but we do not have a mandate to represent all of San Diego, households, families. There are organizations in the room who are county-wide entities like us, but I think many of us look to the leadership of the county. It's no one city. We are an amazing county of cities, unincorporated areas, and so I think to really do any of this work well, when you are thinking about economic development through the lens of economic prosperity, there are groups that have been doing it for decades and decades and decades who haven't necessarily been doing it with each other. And we haven't necessarily always done it as successfully as we could with and through the county. And so I feel like all of this kind of sets us up for a great discussion today. Arnulfo, who's sitting here in the front row, is the CEO of MAC. And he and I and Lisette Islas, who has worked with Arnulfo for a long time and who has become very important in our work, we were having a conversation a few years ago that our two organizations were founded around the same time, I think pretty much the same year. And they were both founded to think about economic development for this region and economic prosperity. Challenges for decades and decades, the people who founded those two organizations didn't see those necessarily as the same thing and weren't in the same rooms together having those discussions. And I think the important thing is things aren't perfect in the county of San Diego, but we are today. So many of you, as you walked into the room, were giving each other hugs because you work together all the time. And in the picture that Steve painted, I think it's so important. We can look at that and think there's an awful lot of names of organizations and cities and municipalities in there, but it's the only way that we can do it in a place this size. I come from the East Coast too. You could drop most of our states in this county. Population and geographic area. So to do it right here, I think we have to do it this way. So I want to just ask, in the order that you're seated, 2 points that were in my talking points that were sent over were to talk a little bit about what economic prosperity means through the lenses of your departments, and then to also talk about how you interact with the community. So I think, Andrew, if you could start to just talk about you and your department, what economic prosperity means to you, and how that is met with engagement with the community.
Sure, and thanks, Mark. And Andrew Strong, I'm the county's director of the Office of Equity and Racial Justice. And I gotta say, when I first came to the county 15 years ago, I was wondering, why the heck doesn't the county of San Diego do economic development, right? But then I quickly learned that, for years we had pushed it out to the EDCs and to the cities to do the work. But I always thought that we had a role in some way. And I'm excited to be in this role because in equity and racial justice, and I've been in this role since 2021, we look at prosperity and economic development through a totally different lens, right? Because I'm not the director of diversity and inclusion, I'm the director of equity and racial justice. And equity means that you look at a population of folks within systems and structures, and you understand what those population of folks need, and you create very targeted approaches to try to give those folks what they need so we can all be successful and reach those goals, right? And then racial justice is really all about that fairness piece and really thinking about how race has impacted our society over time, over decades and centuries, right? And it's caused folks to have a lack of prosperity in their life. So when you think about prosperity, I think about, we just released an equity indicators report in January. And one of the things that struck me was that 25% of San Diegans live 200% below the poverty line. 25%. So in my mind, in the work that we do, we're thinking about those folks. We're thinking about those folks at the poverty line. We're thinking about those folks who are struggling to stay in houses and homelessness, right? And on the verge of homelessness. And what does that look like for us to think about our social responsibility as a county and the $8 billion that we have in the county budget and how we're utilizing those dollars to help folks be prosperous in the county. So a little bit about our department. Like I said, we've been up since 2021. Over the past few years, we've been standing up the work we do and co-creating it with the community. And what we're really responsible for is thinking about culture change within the county of San Diego through equity and racial justice, right? Through that lens, by developing tools, resources, and opportunities for our staff to learn. Things like our budget equity tool that we have in the county of San Diego, things like a training for our employees. But we also look externally to think about creating programs that address the harms that were done by the county of San Diego, right, by other jurisdictions. Things like our social equity program for commercial cannabis and things of that nature, that are very targeted approaches to help raise people out of poverty, raise people out of the disparities that exist in our communities. We also have a program called the Boys and Men of Color Initiative that we're looking at the school to prison pipeline and not reinventing the wheel around these programs, but thinking about how do we fill in the gaps, right, for folks that need resources that may be either in the school to prison pipeline, or how do we get upstream to prevent folks from getting suspended from school and enter into the school to prison pipeline, things of that nature. So that's a little bit about our office. I have a passion around economic development and workforce development, so excited to be having this conversation today.
Fantastic. So Sarah, Interim Chief Administrative Officer for the County of San Diego, so essentially in charge of an East Coast state as we continue to make that comparison.
Have a lot of bosses.
So harder lens to probably kind of narrow it down, but to talk a little bit from the county's perspective about prosperity and how you see it.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. First, let me just say, incredible. Steve, we are so lucky to have you as part of the county team. And then Andrew, you as well, for purposes of really helping us. What I would say is I've been at the county for almost 19 years. And to see the incredible shift as it relates to the priorities and what we're focusing on as a governmental agency, but also as an entity that, as Andrew mentioned, we have an $8 billion budget, but you have $2 billion of that is focused on procurements of different kinds. So what I would just echo and build upon what Andrew has mentioned is really, we are a large company in some respects. So when you think of the procurement power that we have, how are we really focusing as an organization and as an entity to see how we can uplift some of our own community members and open and become more accessible from a procurement standpoint? And what are the things that we need to do as it relates to that to become a place where smaller businesses and entrepreneurs can partner with the county? So that's from an economic standpoint. But beyond that, we have over 3 million community members within our region. And how we structure the partnerships and collaboration with many of you in this room and also outside of this room to be able to really take a look at what are the needs in order for us to truly achieve economic prosperity. Because it's not going to look the same in every community that we have. And so looking at things from the aggregate standpoint, and this is something that Andrew has been a leader and really focusing us on, is you have to have the disaggregate. You have to look at each community. What are the needs? What have been those injustices of the past, government and otherwise, that we also need to make sure that we're addressing? And what role do we play? Going back to Steve's points of, are we a convener? Are we a leader? Are we a partner? And then the other piece for me that I think about is, and Mark, this takes us back to our earlier years. I'm still 29. I don't know about you, but
Same.
with me being at the San Diego Regional Chamber and Mark being at Workforce Partnership, really, how are we looking at those jobs of the future and having those training programs so that we are prepared for the technology needs and green infrastructure and other activities that are going on to ensure that our jobs are higher paying jobs and not ones where our community members have to have 2 or 3 jobs and not be able to spend time with their families. That is not economic prosperity. And how do we really lean into that as the larger community to be able to achieve that together? Because government cannot do it on its own. Nonprofits cannot do it on their own, nor can private sector. So that's where I would leave it.
Very, very well said. Sarah and I were saying, I've been in San Diego for 23 years. I've known Sarah for about 23 years. I'm guessing, Tony, I've probably known you close to that, maybe that amount of time, pretty close. So it's been great working through these decades with you. Jennifer, it's right in the name of your department, so I just want to kind of turn it over to you to talk about the department a bit and tell folks a bit about what prosperity looks like through your eyes.
Sure. So I am Jennifer Bransford-Coons with the Office of Equitable Communities, which is within the Department of Homeless Solutions and Equitable Communities. And so our department as a whole works with individuals that are probably the most economically disadvantaged in our communities, whether it's our Office of Homeless Solutions, where we serve people experiencing homelessness or at risk for homelessness. if it's our Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, that are working with individuals that are maybe newly arriving and need access, maybe have language barriers or barriers to job skills, things of that nature. And then my office is the Office of Equitable Communities. And we're really charged with community engagement at its very basic levels. So for my office, it's about making sure that communities understand how to access what they need to become self-sufficient. So that may be things like our community health workers being in the field every day, working one-on-one with community members, making sure that they know how to access county resources, know how to access health resources, self-sufficiency resources, and really making sure that they have a foundation so that they can have a job, have a home, have other things that they need to be able to thrive in our communities. We also, on a little bit higher level, work with community leaders in our community leadership teams, because as has been said before, we know each community is a little different, sometimes neighborhood by neighborhood, and the issues that each community is facing might be very, very different. So it's important for us to have leaders in the community that are reflective of the communities that they serve, and for them to be elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder with community leaders, community-based organizations, to understand the issues that are happening for those communities, and to work together, not the county coming into a community and telling them what they need to do, but really listening and understanding what are the barriers that they're facing when it comes to economic challenges or any other challenge that might be coming up. So our office hosts 5 different community leadership teams throughout the county to hear and to work on issues that communities are facing, whether it's behavioral health issues, homelessness issues, substance use issues, and to really understand from the community's perspective, how do they want to help? How do they want help with solving those problems? We can't solve them alone. We can't do that work all by ourselves as the county. We really need to partner and to be a backbone and a support to the community in how they see best to work through their issues. We're also there to help celebrate things that are going well for communities, and we're really just a thought partner with them in so many different ways. For us, prosperity really means that people have access to what they need to be able to live a life that's thriving, that they should be able to not have to have 2 jobs in order to survive and in order to pay their rent. And so how do you do that? You do that through making sure that they have access to language classes, job readiness skills, access to housing. And all of that, we try our best to make sure that we're sharing that information in a culturally and linguistically appropriate way with communities, and making sure that we really understand what their needs are, and we're not telling them what they need, but they are telling us what they need. So making those connections for them.
Excellent, thank you. And Davia, for those of us in this work, and it's a room full of folks in this work, land use is a foundation of economic development in every way. So can you talk a bit about your department, your role, and again, sort of prosperity through your lens?
Sure, thank you. I'm Davia Lynch. I'm currently in an interim role, but normally I wear the hat of the Director of Planning and Development Services, which is all things development, all things land use, really, so it's broader than that. We work on long-range plans for various communities where we're citing housing, industry, how those areas interact, and then also sort of the day-to-day. Really exciting. Permit processing. I know. You're really excited. I'm going to talk about zoning for a while. Just kidding. But we really handle all of those various aspects, and I really want to build on what Sarah mentioned in terms of the shift that we're seeing. I think when we talk about prosperity, it's really about this equity lens that my colleagues up here are talking about, and the shift that we're seeing from the focus on those who are generating wealth, maybe at the very top of the food chain, so to speak, economically. So I think the focus at one point from an economic perspective in my world was really on developers, a very large scale, right? Large scale development was really seen as sort of that driver economically. I think there's a real shift, a much more holistic perspective that I'm very excited about, both on focusing on everybody at every level in every community, and the rising tide lifts all boats sort of perspective, where we are really recognizing not only is it the right thing to do to have that equal engagement, that equal access, which is not necessarily equal, it's an equity piece, right? It may take more to engage with different folks, to highlight that whatever I'm doing may have an effect on you, and I need you to be at the table. I'd like you to be at the table, I invite you to be at the table, or how can I come to your table to understand what we can do differently, how we can approach this to leverage your strengths, build on the assets that your community has, and fulfill your needs, because that's our role. But also in the long term, recognizing that, in fact, prosperity is not just what we build, it's the holistic communities that are, when they're thriving, truly are prosperous. And I think an example of that is open space conservation. Up front, that's an investment. That is a cost to the community, right? We've invested millions upon millions of dollars as the county over many, many years to to conserve thousands of acres. But when we step back and look at the value that adds literally to individual homes, to the quality of life for individuals who can walk along those trails, to the tourism economy, really it's those holistic communities that actually are prosperous. I think when I think about going on vacation, or you go on vacation, it's really being able to go somewhere that you can see folks are thriving around you. And when you sense and you see that either the infrastructure or the community is suffering in some way, we take that back with us. That is not a prosperous community, and I think we know that. So for us, it's really been shifting the focus to ensure that access for everybody, while we are also still recognizing the need to keep those permits going, keep the wheels of the economy moving. So it's much broader for us as well.
That's great, thank you. I think for the next question, we'll start with Davia and then kind of work our way back down. But just picking up off that a little bit, so it's interesting. Years ago, there was a great researcher and labor leader in San Diego. Many of you may have known him, named Don Cohen. He used to lead the Center for Policy Initiatives, and I know Sarah knew him well. And Don was an interesting guy, and he was very straightforward with how he saw things. And I remember walking with him in downtown San Diego one day, decades ago, and him I was pointing out the growth, the construction work that was being done. And he was questioning whether we as a region were doing enough to make sure that as those buildings got built, we trained enough new workers to learn that trade. And he said to me, that's the difference between, that's policy and planning, Mark. We can all throw up a building, but we need to start getting together as a region and really think through what do we need to do holistically as part of that project so that we're a better community as a result. And I think that's a lot of what you were just talking about. With that said, there has been, and I don't know that this is truth versus myth, but there's always been this thought of like, it's hard to know and understand how to engage with the county in certain ways. And I think of you all as very accessible, but that's from where I stand. So it would just be great for a moment, again, if we could start with you, Davia, and work our way back down, with just thoughts on how folks in the room and communities and constituents who they represent should think about and see engaging with your department within the county.
Absolutely. Well, one of our hopes is that with everything that we do, and we have a community outreach plan for almost every effort that we are involved in, and certainly there are touch points, hopefully we are visible or touching you in some way through something that we are doing, whether that's pulling together small working groups. For example, we'll pull together developers or engineers to come together and help us resolve different issues, help us understand, why is this area not developing? This is a great spot for housing. Why is nothing happening there? What needs to occur? So hopefully those touch points are happening, or whether you're a CBO or a trusted community partner, that we're talking with you. So I think ideally there's that face-to-face communication, and that would be our ideal opportunity, whether it's me or one of my staff at any level in the organization. Alternately, I think, if you want to do the quick approach, ideally the way that we really operate from a cultural perspective is that if you jump online and you say, hey, I want to learn more about building permits, and you go online, there's going to be a phone number or somebody you can call, somebody you can talk to there, and get that initial communication. But really that's the way that we really encourage our team and the ethos that we instill in our team, that communication, whether you jump on a Zoom call with somebody or actually talk to them, or go to their community that you're going to be able to engage with them. So I think there are a lot of different routes. We are trying to do more of this sort of proactive engagement with folks. So there are a lot of different ways to reach us and plenty of different starting points.
Well said. Jennifer?
Thank you for that question. It's really something that we pride ourselves on. My whole office's goal is to engage with every single member of the community, every community organization. And the way that we do that is by being proactive, by being out there having leadership team meetings, which every single one of you are invited to. We have 5 of them on a monthly basis, and it's a time to interact with other partners in the community, sometimes from various sectors, whether it's economic or health or any of the different sectors that we might be working with at any given time. So I would encourage you to, I can send out information and make sure that you know what our leadership team meetings are doing. We also have different ways of receiving input, and that might be through our email, which is hopefully easy to remember, hhsa.communities@sdcounty.ca.gov. So any information that you'd like to share or to connect with us, we can reach out to you that way. We have community newsletters set up by region. So we're sharing information like grant opportunities, what's happening in the community. And that's another way to get information about what's going on for us. We have a community action board for our community action agency. And within our office, we have the county's community action agency called Community Action Partnership. And we have several contracts through there, including Project MOST, which is to help smaller community-based organizations learn how to go through the county contracting process. So we have a lot of touch points throughout the month of how to reach our department.
Thanks, Jennifer. Just a couple of things to add to what Davia and Jennifer have said. Definitely, you will see phone numbers, email addresses, contact information for various team members, for all of our departments on the website. But our website, I think many governments are guilty of this, not very user-friendly. So that is an effort that we are undertaking as the county to really try and think of our outward-facing website through the lens of the members of the public. So I'll take a look at ours so that it's not going, planning and development services does A, B, C, D, but really looking at it through that lens of what is it that the members of the public would be coming to us for. So that's an effort that hopefully will help in some of those situations. But I will be honest, I have family members who still see me and say, so how's the city doing? I'm like, I don't know how the city is doing, but I do know how the county is doing. So it's just, one of those mysteries as well of what governmental entities do what. So I think all of us as government can do and should do a better job of really being able to highlight where we cross paths and where, if you need some road improvements, you're contacting the county, but it's really the city. And ultimately, at the end of the day, ideally from a regional standpoint, how do we get to a point where it really doesn't matter what entity is contacted, but that we're able to get the community members to the individual at the right entity that they need to be able to solve the problem versus saying, that's not us, that's the city of Poway, so please contact Poway versus, right? So if there's a robot that can do that for us or whatever those scenarios might be, I think that's also one of the tension points for us really is regional governmental entities.
So what you're saying is the bureaucracy is real. And so are the layers of confusion and all those things. I'm actually got a text from somebody in the room right now. I'm not they'll remain nameless, but asking how to navigate those layers and the different walls of government. And the good thing is that we acknowledge that, like Sarah said, and a while ago, I think about 2-3 years ago, we restructured our GMS and our general management system, the way the county operates, the way we do business, and our strategic plan, and we put community engagement at the heart. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted not just the public to see that, but our county to see that, and think about how do we restructure internally and externally with our websites to be more user-friendly so people can engage with us. And our office is very intentional about how do we co-create everything, right? Co-create everything with members of the public and with our, not just members of the public, with our 20,000 employees who I see as community members too, right? So how do we make sure we continue to co-create and engage with folks and open those doors and that no wrong door approach across the county. But how do you engage with us in our office? We are on social media, right? All the platforms we're on. We try to engage through our county partner platforms, through the website, of course, but also boots on the ground. Like we want to show up where you are. We want to go to your meetings. We want to invite us out, invite members of our county team to your spaces so we don't have to engage when we want some information about a specific project. We just know you as friends and partners and community folks, right? So invite us out to your spaces and we can engage with you that way too.
Yeah, and I think that last piece is very important. You know, as I look out at a lot of you, I know that a lot of you have boards of your own. And I know for those of us who have boards that meet at a regular clip, you're looking for content a lot. And it's those same businesses and those same community members and same boards who are asking us a lot of questions at times as organizations about how to function with government, you know, within the region. So as we kind of go down the row one more time, there's kind of like a two-part question in a way to think about this. One of the things that we wanted to do before we open it up for questions, because I think there'll be some great questions from a lot of leaders in the audience as well, is to share something that you would like the audience to know about the county right now. But part of that might be an initiative that you're working on that you're really proud of. That might be just something that you want to make sure as folks walk out of the room today they remember. But just what's top of mind for you when you think about the county right now and what you'd want to make sure that folks in the room don't miss, understand, or hear a little bit more about?
I guess I'll start. And what's top of the mind for me, and Steve kind of talked a little bit about this, is our work around equity and contracting and the supplier diversity. It's really top of the mind for me because I keep going back to our budget, $8 billion and the $2 billion that we're investing in the community and really looking differently, having a paradigm shift about how we're seeing those dollars and how we're telling the story about where those dollars are going in the community, but also doing an analysis of where we're spending those dollars. So if we know if those dollars are going out of the community, are they going out of the region? Are they going out of our state, right? And we need to be very conscious of that and then be very targeted in our approaches to try to make sure we invest in our communities through our budget and through that lens and working really closely with our purchasing contracting department to think about that level of analysis. But also, what are those barriers to participation in equity and contracting within the county for our small businesses, our mom and pops, right? Our diverse businesses, our women, veteran-owned business. What are those barriers? And let's tear them down, right? Is it a net 15 payment instead of a net 30 payment? Like, what are those things, those small things that we could change, the policies that we could put in place? And we've been doing a lot of work, you know, over the past few years in that space, and there's a lot more to do. And I know that we're going to be engaging the partners in this room in that space too, specifically in supply diversity and equity and contracting. But another program that we rolled out in our office was our equity impact grants for our nonprofits. I know nonprofits are not for-profits, right, obviously, but just that program was created because there was a need for those small nonprofits, right, to be able to get rid of as much red tape as we can to give money to those folks and get out of the way and let them do the work, but provide them with some type of capacity building and training to help them grow, right, to help them grow and be sustainable, right, give them the support they need. And I see the same type of need for those small businesses, right, and I think we as a county still have a very similar responsibility to figure out how we invest in that, and that's what Steve was talking about, some of that programming that could come from that level of analysis of the type of barriers that exist within the county of the things that we could do, but also invest in those nonprofits with some of the dollars we have, or the for-profit businesses with some of the dollars we have.
Well said. Sarah?
Thanks, Mark. Engage with us. I think that's really the biggest thing that I would leave us with. The economic development components that we are moving forward with are really critical for us as a region. Hold us accountable to that. Participate in the conversations and discussions. We're going to have budget presentations starting next week. Please monitor, please review, give us input and feedback. We don't know what we don't know. So your engagement is critical and key to us being able to deliver on those things that are important to the community. And then the last piece that I would just share is invite us to your table, have us, as Andrew was mentioning there, so that we can be thought partners in how we move forward with the commitment towards economic prosperity.
Excellent, thank you. Jennifer?
So I think for me, it's really about how the county is investing in communities. So earlier on the presentation, Steve had a little bit about Live Well centers. And one of the biggest things that comes to mind for me is in the last year, we completed and opened the Southeastern Live Well Center. And that was really the first time that we had gone to the community and said, what do you want to see in a building? Down to what color should the building be and what is the artwork that's going to be in the building. And then investing in artists, you know, and making sure that they had a presence in the building and that the art was chosen by the community. And to even when the building is being built, that we say to the builder, you've got to hire 5% of your workers, train them and have young workers learn a trade on this building, and then they even went above that and did 10%, more than 10%, lived in the surrounding community. But not only did all of that happen, we've continued to invest in the community there by doing things like having community job fairs, teaching people, having people come in and educating them about what does it mean to work for the county? How do you get a job? We are a black box, we're difficult. You can't contract with us and getting a job is difficult. So we wanted to teach people, how can you come and work for the county? We're a stable employer and we're a large employer. So we lifted up the curtain and let them see this is how you go through applying for a job. And then we actually had a job fair and did same-day interviews and hired people the same day, investing in that community and making sure that the Southeastern community had what they needed to be able to become part of the county family. We have a CBO suite, so community-based organizations, they can come in and use our space at no cost. Meeting rooms, cubicles, the wireless, all of that is there for community-based organizations, smaller organizations that maybe don't have a footprint in the community, to be able to come in and use all of that and be available to the rest of the people coming into the building. So really seeing ourselves as a piece of the community and something that is more than just government services, but really is a community hub. I think that's a different way that we're looking at working with our communities, and it's something that I'm really proud that we got to be a part of. And I think it's something that we hope to do more of in the future.
Great. Davia?
I want to. Oops. I lost this. Am I? Okay, good. So, Andrew, you're right, as usual. Bureaucracy is real. But one thing I do want to highlight, and it's also something I'm very proud of that we have been guided to do, directed to do from our board's level, from Sarah, is to really break free from one of those things that is so stereotypically bureaucratic, which is not my job, right? This, not in my swim lane. And we all kind of stay in our swim lane and we do our little thing and we hope at some point that everybody comes together. In that, the end game, the outcome over time occurs. I think in this era of wicked problems, wicked challenges, climate issues, housing issues, we can no longer afford to do that. And I think that we are really, really focused on making sure that each and every one of us understand my job is not to do my piece of the puzzle. My job is to make sure that outcome occurs, right? So in the case of housing, an illustrative example for us is being able to identify certain areas in our community that are really kind of the few bastions of remaining land that are close to transit and really incredible opportunity areas that are just sitting there vacant, where we recognize there is a multi-agency, absolutely integrated approach that needs to happen to bring sewer to these areas, to find out what those communities need in those areas. They may not have sidewalks, right? To understand what it's really going to take to go from this high-level concept, oh, I drew a plan, there could be housing there someday, to understanding that our job is to make sure that comes out of the ground and it looks the way the community needs it to look, and that the resources the community needs are there when that happens. And so we really, really are getting out there, talking with every single person and party who can be part of that solution, and formulating plans that don't only say this is the vision and dream we'd like to see. They talk about how do we get there, and who do we need to work with, and who needs to bring resources or how do we need to bring resources to the table. What can we do to be part of that solution? For me, that's really one of the big things that we have changed, and I think it's all about prosperity at the end of the day for all of us.
Excellent. Thank you. So I want to flip that last question to all of you for a minute, but also I just want to stop and take a moment to really just sort of recognize leadership of the county as well. When I took this job at the San Diego Regional EDC, which for those of you who don't know us is not a government entity. We've been funded by the private sector to work on behalf of the region to drive economic growth strategies. Some of that's done through the World Trade Center, very international in focus. Some of it is done by people who are here in the room who just engage directly with businesses every day, but countywide, really trying to do that in a binational way, really truly see Northern Baja as a part of this county and a huge economic asset, as I know many of us do. But I remember when I was leaving my old role at San Diego Workforce Partnership, the last person I went out to talk to about it before I left was the then chair of the Board of Supervisors, Ron Roberts. And for those of you who've known Ron for a long time, if you knew Ron had a really sort of stern view of economic development organizations in San Diego. So when I went in to meet with Ron, and I love Ron, he lectured me about everything I needed to do differently. That was really kind of the focus. I will say, and Ron was a great supporter of mine and lots of folks in this room, it is really a testament to all of you that as Steve came in, Caroline, as you took on your new role, even with Chairwoman Vargas, the number of times we as an organization, and I know it's true for others in the room, get a phone call from a leader at the county who says, just tell me what you think about this. Just to sort of like, give me your thoughts on this. And I think the thing that's so important about that is, Jim O'Callahan runs the South County EDC. His thoughts are different than mine, right? Eric Bruvald runs the North County EDC. Danny Fitzgerald knows more about small businesses than anyone I know. Arnulfo has worked with parts of this community that I've never worked with. Tony Young has a lens on workforce and training these days through his team that other people don't have. Like, we're strong as a region when we reach out to each other and we say, tell me what you're seeing. Tell me what you think about this. We have multiple universities sitting in this room. We have people who know and understand the innovation economy better than anyone. So that's, I think, an important thing for the county to hear a little bit about as well. So I would ask some of you, representing lots of, and I know a lot of you, so I will call on you if you don't talk. Just to share a little bit of what's top of mind for you all. What are some of the things that some of you have been working on lately or championing for a long time that you'd like to see more county engagement with or more knowledge of on behalf of the county? And so just want to open it up. Yes, sir.
So I'll just start off. I just returned back from Texas, back to San Diego, and I'm an entrepreneur out here in San Diego. We're developing an AI solution for repurposing drugs for rare diseases. And I've been looking, before I was working with Logan Heights EDC on some local community initiatives. I'm trying to see a community from a holistic umbrella view of all of San Diego County. What's the best approach to approach, rather than individual EDCs, an umbrella where we can create a program for better healthcare and awareness for genetic testing and preventive healthcare rather than being reactive. There's a lot of issues out there.
Absolutely.
And so how can, I'm here because I'm as an individual, I'm at UCSD as part of the incubator there. They said, you got to come out here, thanks to Christina out there at the Talent Foundry. She said, come here, reach out to people. I'm reaching out to people. I'm putting my neck on there. I want to know how I can get involved. So I'm just asking about this question.
Yeah, I'll answer it on behalf of economic development organizations. I'll ask my peers to chime in if you think I get anything wrong. To paint a really important picture in San Diego, and I think it's a really important picture, there is a San Diego Regional EDC. There is a South County, East County, North County EDC. We have a downtown partnership organization whose mandate is not economic development, but whose focus and emphasis is downtown. There's an Imperial Valley EDC, there's Tijuana EDC, and there's more, right? So that, for starters, sounds like a big picture, but we all work together often, kind of on everything. I mean, if something's happening in a particular part of the county, that sub-regional EDC usually leads and the rest of us engage if needed. It's also really, really important to note that every city in the region has really strong economic development leadership as well. So within the municipality itself, and when it comes down to things like permitting and land use, and there is nudging that a bunch of us can do from outside, but that work only gets done inside. When it comes to public health topics and discussions, I think, like, for one, there are forums that we have as an organization where almost all those peers who I just mentioned are part of our board structure and our committee structure at EDC. So if and UCSD is a really, really important, we actually function out of a UCSD building. So if there's anything that we can ever help amplify with our peers, we can do that. I would also point out, like, I've mentioned the Workforce Partnership, Tony Young, a county-wide workforce development organization with a mandate to really geographically ensure that work is making it out to all corners of the county, along with funding, and others who play those roles in the room as well.
So I would just also add, I was a faculty member in UT Austin. I'm now going to be a faculty member here in San Diego, University of San Diego, as well as hopefully at San Diego State. And so I'm trying to aggressively, actively, with my young energy, go out there and teach entrepreneurship, but also these skills that young people need to learn.
Yeah.
But also tying it into actual, real life learning where we can bring interns into programs like we're doing at UCSD. And I just want to say, my name is Raj Sodhi, and my company's name is Maddie Bio. Developed that for my own daughter who has a rare disease. And so I felt that San Diego was the best ecosystem out there in this country. And I'm proud of it. And I'm proud to be back here. So
Thank you for being
look
here for
forward
all
to
those
contributing
reasons.
back to the public here for public good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone who comes back from Texas, we'll always accept that. Is there anything that folks from the county want to add, or anything else that others in the audience want to add before I move on? Because important points. Good. Okay, thank you, and happy to talk to you afterwards as well. So, yes.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for the shout out. I appreciate
always.
that. Well, I would just want to let everybody know my name is Tony Young. I am the interim president and CEO of the Workforce Partnership, and we focus on training. We focus on getting people prepared for some of the jobs that we were talking about. And Caroline is on our board, so that's one thing that's been great. What our goal is, one of our goals is to engage with, especially the county, to make sure that we help you achieve your goals, right? We look at you as our partners, and not necessarily what you can give us, but how we can partner with you. So I saw that you have a number of different goals. Caroline and I we've talked about that, but there's some of those goals that are in tandem with what we do, and we want to make sure that you get credit for that also. So I was wondering, is there anything that you can think of that we can do to help you achieve the goals that you have as a region?
I have a list, Tony, as you know, that I'm very excited to talk to you about. But no, and we've talked about internship programs and workforce development programs and trying to really, one of the things I've always wanted to do is try to connect the private sector with the government, right? And collectively providing internship opportunities for our youth, whether it's high school or it's colleges. And I know there's a lot of conversations and work around that in different spaces, but one of the things I think will be a great conversation that we should maybe even think about leaning into sooner than later is how do we maybe utilize the Workforce Partnership in the county as kind of like the conveners to bring folks together in that conversation and space. But I think that's something that's at the top of my mind as far as summer's coming up. I know y'all got kids that are trying to get internships, and there's all type of opportunities across this region to get kids off to a good start. So I think that's one really important one.
Tony, I've got a long list too. One of the things that I would say is I'll give the example of the regional decarbonization framework that the county is helping to lead. And, how do we come together to look at that through just few different buckets or lenses? One is, what are those industries of the future that we as a region should be mapping out? And then based on that, so that's Mark and the other EDCs and organizations, right, who need to help us with that. The other bucket would really be based on those industries, what's the type of funding that we need to make those industries happen? So based on our geography by national, Imperial County, how do we become a force to be reckoned with as it relates to when we're looking at things such as climate change. And then the third bucket is, and the critical piece really as we look at it with a partnership with you and the workforce partnership would be, what are those jobs of the future based on those industries, and how do we start mapping that out now? And how do we partner with our labor unions and our private sector and nonprofits to be able to start those training programs? So that's just one example of one of the things that I truly believe would be, we have the biotech community here. How do we multiply that into various sectors for our region? Because the beauty of our region is that we are diversified. And how do we build upon that? And so how we can join forces in that. And then the other piece is when I look at it internally, because I also want to be able to do that, is technology is changing the way government will be operating in the future as well. And are we as government prepared for that? And I'm not sure we are yet. And so how do we do that? So Mark had mentioned, he has a meeting on AI, and how do we bring that to the government sector to say, here's where technology is headed. Here are the types of jobs that you should be focusing on. Here are the types of things that when we look at artificial intelligence will probably help you in ways. I'm obsessed with reading different sorts of the trades magazines that come in and so forth, and one is government technology, and I can't get enough of that because it's showing all the things that you can use AI to help you be more creative in solving the problems within the region or communities. So let's have lunch with some of our leadership team and really take a look at what those things could look like.
Thank you. Another question over here, yes.
Hi, Chevelle, District Director with Assemblymember Akilah Weber. Thank you all for putting on this wonderful conversation. I love the first question that you asked the panel about what prosperity means to you. And so it also made me think of at what point will our communities stop being underserved? When will we reach that goal of, okay, this community is no longer underserved? When will they be prosperous, right? And so my question is the county as a regional body doing anything to measure that prosperity? How will you know when we've gotten there? What metrics are in place to kind of, again, show that we as a region are moving the needle towards something more prosperous? And it could look like something with AI, it could look like a user-friendly dashboard where we're looking at different kind of indicators, but is the county doing anything like that, and what does it look like?
I have an answer, but it's not on behalf of the county, so I want to see if anyone from the county wants to take that first, because I want to talk a little bit about a county-wide effort that we would love to talk to Dr. Weber more about, especially how that factors into your goals, at the state level. But I just want to see if anyone from the county wants to address that first.
I'd love to hear about your effort because one of the things we were, when we created our equity indicator report, it had 34 indicators. We started off with 120 indicators. We narrowed them down with the community support and 34 indicators. And we have some around jobs, finances, but one thing we really quickly realized is that there wasn't necessarily an indicator to really measure what we think we need to measure to see that, to see how we are lifting communities out of poverty, right? Out of being underserved. And so one of the things we have thought about doing, and we're in early talks with the Workforce Partnership early, and we kind of put a pause on it because we want to get the report out, was how do we create a new indicator? How do we create a new survey for the community, for this specific region, to do a baseline analysis on what we're trying to look at to show us how we're getting out of being underserved as a community and as a region. So love to hear about what you're.
Absolutely. Jennifer, anything? Yes, please.
I do think that there are a number of indicators that through our Public Health Community Statistics Unit that looks at jobs and economic growth and poverty, but they don't say when are we lifted out of that, and how do we help under-resourced communities really get lifted. It just measures it, and I don't think we have anything that says this is an indicator that would make it be, okay, we've reached our goal. And so, yeah, love to hear.
Okay. So I'll just share with you an effort that actually the county has been very involved in with us. So our organization, going back about 8 years ago, started to, well, be quite honest with you, we were in Washington, D.C. We had been working really closely with the Brookings Institute to really kind of get San Diego's economy, our regional economy, seen in the global economy discussion. So as the top economic thinkers globally were thinking of what global cities were, we wanted this region, not just the city, but this region to be on that map. And a lot of our trade strategies and things of that nature grew out of those discussions. But we were back in Washington, D.C. years back, you'll remember the time frame, and the mayors then of Atlanta and Louisville were on stage. And they were supposed to talk about export plans for their cities. And Mayor Kasim Reed from Atlanta said, I can't talk to you about an export plan for my city without talking to you about what just happened in Ferguson, Missouri. And he said, because if any of you think that that isn't a jobs issue, you're wrong. He said it's a hopelessness issue, and here's how that hopelessness fosters in a community like Ferguson. And he essentially said, so if we as leaders aren't tackling those issues, we shouldn't be up here on stage talking about economic strategy at all. And it led Brookings to really kind of start to question its work with a lot of us as regions, because at that time I could have stood on a stage and talked about all kinds of surging economic indicators in San Diego and 3.5% unemployment and things that could make the region look great, and all of us could look out the windows of the communities that we live in and that we work in and know that that's not the picture that many San Diegans see, and increasingly through the pandemic and into today, that picture has become more strained, more challenging, and the communities that were the most disconnected then to economic opportunity are even more so now. So around that time, we pivoted from looking at sort of traditional ways that an organization like ours should think about how an economy grows, and really try to get down to three really basic things, and that is, how many young people are we training every year and getting the degrees and the credentials they need to make it in our economy? And we need to train tens of thousands every year just to keep up with the pace of the jobs that are being created in our community. And if we just focused our emphasis on helping our Latino and African American students get the same resources and have an opportunity to achieve at the same level as white and Asian counterparts, we'd have a surplus of talent. So if people are thinking of where the effort has to be, that's where we as a region need to be thinking. The second one is that we are a region of 90+% small businesses. You know, Ron Garnett, Danny Fitzgerald, all these folks who work in that community and know the strategies that we as a region need to galvanize around, but we need to create more quality jobs in those small businesses because they can't compete with the large businesses. They lose talent to the large businesses. So for all the entrepreneurs that are creating new things in communities, not just entrepreneurs in the sense of up on the Mesa doing scientific work, but the mom and pop shops that are growing in communities, if they can't keep and retain people, we have to help them figure out how they develop strategies to connect to these big economic anchors in our community. And so we have tens of thousands of quality jobs that we need to create so that people between now and 2030 can be thriving. And there is actually something called a Thriving Households Index. And this should embarrass all of us, right? All of us as citizens should hear this, and leaders should hear this. So we need to create tens of thousands more thriving households each year between now and 2030, not so that everybody is living at a prosperous level, but just so a simple majority of San Diegans, 51% of us, is living at a threshold of true self-sufficiency. Now, not saying that all those people are living in poverty, but we're saying, can you save? Can you afford a house? Can you afford your rent? Can you not have to make the decisions that says, I won't eat this week so my child can have whatever they need? So those have now become our 2030 organizational goals. They are very, very dialed in to the specific numbers that we need with each passing year. We are 100% aware that we can't do any of that without everybody in this room and a lot more folks that we all know. Like, that's what we should be striving for. I would argue with no emphasis on the EDC driving that those should be our regional goals. And if we really wanted to get back to what you opened with, which I think is so true, the practice of economic development it over the years has become an oversimplified look at a few people telling big businesses from somewhere else they should come here. If we were teaching it to young people, we'd be be teaching them about strategies that uplift entire communities, and those would be the strategies, right? Those would be the strategies coupled with a lot of other things that people in this room do well. That's what would make our region really thrive on a global stage. The trade strategies, the rest of it are important, but they would come from that, and our full population could engage in that. So I know your boss is a champion of that, and I would love to engage with you more and even give you a briefing on the on what those goals look like and what the metrics look like between now and 2030. Yes, probably I'm going to guess last question before we should wrap up, so absolutely.
Good afternoon. Thank you. And I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you about economic prosperity. My name is Dr. Alexis Avina, and I also used to work for the county, so it's nice to see familiar faces. I now work for MAC Project. I'm the Early Childhood Education Officer overseeing 20 plus Head Starts. Head Starts are preschool programming for children 0 to 5. And so my question aims at multi-generational approaches, multi-generational strategies, policies, partnerships, and programs. What's on the horizon from your perspective at the county that I can share with my partners, with my families, and communities that we serve?
Excellent. And congratulations on your new role. So,
Thank you.
Turn it over to folks.
Hi, Alexis. Well, I can talk a little bit about some of the strategies that at least my office has been involved with. And then, of course, our Child and Family Wellbeing Department, which was just reorganized from Child Welfare Services to really have two offices, one focused on safety and one focused on prevention and really uplifting families to be able to prevent any bad actions in the future, and then just to really uplift them to be strong family units. And we partner a lot with them in different ways, whether it's community engagement. One of the things that we've done most recently is our grandparents raising grandchildren. So we know that a lot of families in the community may not be traditional families and may have kinship families. And so it's really important for us to uplift those families. Sometimes it's even more difficult for them to gain access to the needed services that they might have. And so really making sure that we're connecting them to the services that will help to foster education. When I think about it, I think about, my grandparents or my mom, even last night calling me, needing help with her Kindle. If she was raising my son, and she would not, the digital divide is huge. And so I think about intergenerational families that don't have the resources and the access to the things that they need to thrive, just even in the little things like, how does my Kindle work? So we do a lot of work with connecting those intergenerational families to resources and making sure that there's the opportunity for those families to have even better life, resources and all of that. There's also the Child Care Blueprint, which I'm sure you've heard of, which is really looking at whether or not, or how to better access childcare, because we know that's a great need in our community, affordable, but also enriching. And so Alethea is leading the charge in that area. And so highly recommend those connections and making sure that you're well-versed in those areas as well.
And I know we have a lot more to ask. I want to be conscious of time because I know you had us ending. Is it okay to take one more question? Okay. Yep. One more.
Thank you so much for
Absolutely.
making time. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for Mark and the panelists. My name is Elsa Beljean. I'm the new Regional Economic Recovery Coordinator for the Southern Border for the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development at the state of California. And I wanted to introduce myself. I am based in San Diego, and one of my main goals is to understand the level of collaboration between San Diego entities, CBOs, local governments, and community-based organizations that focus on disinvested communities specifically. And we focus on equity and racial justice. So many of the programs at the state level are supporting these goals, and we want to make sure that you are connected with the state goals and with the state resources. And my question to you is, how do you connect with the state, and how how much as a good partner is the state so far in your projects, and how can we make those connections even better? I'm based in San Diego to make that happen, like you said, Mark, to make San Diego be seen in Sacramento. So again, thank you so much again for Steve. Steve, you're making a great job in economic development. I want to send kudos to you, and also to participating on the effort California Just First. It's plain to see that here we have co-conveners. Karen Connolly over here with PIC is one of our representatives for San Diego. San Diego State University was here as well with John McMillan, and I'm here to make connections happen. So the question is to you, how can we connect regarding equity and programs that you're
I think people
supporting?
are probably really glad to have you in the room, to be honest with you. I think
Yeah.
that connection with the state is
Thank you.
really, really important. We're very far away from Sacramento. All jokes aside, we are. So having you present, I think, probably means a lot to people. I don't know if there's other thoughts that people want to, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
There we go. Now I'm standing with my back to my boss. It's very awkward. So our Economic Development and Government Affairs Office, one of the reasons we're combined is that it kind of creates that synergy to have those intergovernmental conversations. And so Steve's counterpart on our team, Matthew Parr, is our Deputy Director of Government Affairs. I know Chevelle talks to us all the time, but we really act as that connection to our elected officials, our state departments, our federal departments, and how we connect both administratively and then with our elected officials teams. So that's why they all looked at me. Our county departments work through us. We have a team of policy advisors that covers each of the issue areas that then is responsible for maintaining those connections with both the administration and the elected side of the state and federal governments.
Thank you. So, and I think with that, I know lots more to ask, probably lots more to say. I just want to wrap up. I want to thank our panel again. If you all could just kind of take a moment to thank our panel. I want to thank, I really want to thank the county for asking me to be here, and I'm truly grateful that we have you all doing the work that you're doing. And I would end, especially with I think our message to the state and others is, I know my team would probably want me to end with some sort of call to action. I think the only real call to action is that we just need to keep working together better. Like, we got to challenge ourselves all the time, and when there's messages that aren't making it out to certain places, it's not bad to tell each other that. It's actually good to tell each other that, so that we make sure that we kind of start, continue to approach this work differently. And if we do that, we'll learn from each other. And I think, people always say what makes a great region. That's what makes a great region. And I think it's the composition of people in the room, continuously pushing ourselves to learn more from each other and to work together. And we welcome more of that. So thank you all.